But one of the questions I often get is like, well, how does it work? Like, what are you doing? And so the analogy that I use, that seems to be the most effective, is that we're each a garden hose.
Oh.
And my client comes because there's a kink, right? And they can't seem to unkink it. And so I attach my hose. My hose is running clear because of all my practices that I do.
Mm-hmm.
And we hook up, and their kink starts unkinking. Yeah.
Welcome to Lived In by Zoe Therapy Services. I'm your host, Micah Faye, and I'm excited to share with you a community of experts who specialize in helping you feel fantastic. That's what Lived In aims to be, an online hub for DIY wellness, led by the experts and curated by folks who care. In this wellness series, I interview Richmond community leaders, vendors, and healers to empower you with a toolkit, one filled with healthy practices to make every day just a little bit better. So welcome to Lived In, your online comfy couch, surrounded by friends and supported by experts. Come on in. We're excited to have you.
Hi, I'm Cheryl Pallant, and I do energy medicine, and I specialize in healing touch and Reiki.
Wow. Okay. Thank you. So energy medicine, can you explain that to me as though I'm like a middle schooler?
Yeah. So most people think about their body as a physical, what you can see, what you can feel, but we're more than our physical self, in the same way that, I think it's like 80% water. We also have a lot of what's referred to as energy.
Okay.
And so I am primarily working with the energy of a person's body.
Can you tell me more about energy and what that means?
Yeah, so energy. It's kind of fundamental to who we are.
Okay.
It's part of our being and part of our matter, and it fluctuates through the day and it fluctuates through our lives. And so what I'm doing in my practice is making sure that our energy is flowing well. And if it's not flowing well, then that creates a certain level of unease or dis-ease. So it could show up as a physical ailment. It could be a cold, or it could be cancer, or it could be mental, and it could be something like anxiety or depression, or it could be spiritual, in that you're just not quite at home with yourself. Can't even pinpoint it. But when you're flowing well, that's when every one of your systems is working.
So we should think of energy as not only mental and spiritual, but also physical. I didn't know that part.
It's all of it. I mean, it interpenetrates. So it's woven in. So you can't separate it.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you can actually see it move with a pendulum, can't you?
You can see it move with a pendulum. I've taught some classes in which I show people, especially non-believers, and they're like, "Yeah, right. Let's see this." And like, who's moving it?
Yeah.
Who's moving it? Right. And then I'm also able to feel it. So I'm always, working around. I do both hands-on and then hands-off, and I can feel someone's energy. And then I can see it, not necessarily with these eyes, but my inner eyes.
Yeah.
And I've learned over the years to know like what different feels feel like, what they mean, what they represent, and the same thing with what I see. So it might be, it's pretty obvious someone's got like something broken, but sometimes it's not so visible what's going on. So.
Do you think that's innate to you, or is that a skill that you've built, or is that something you've always had? I'm curious.
I think we all have it to some degree. And you think about you're in a room, maybe it's a party, some stranger walks in the door, and you're like, ooh, you got, that person gives me the creeps, and you've picked up on their energy. That's it. I have a dance background, and my dance background has made me much more sensitive to that. And then I also have a meditation background, and those two together have made me much more adept at it. And then once I went through training, and then I started really understanding what all these things mean.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you feel the energy as a temperature or more as a force? Or,
It depends. It's temperature. Pain is temperature. So if someone's like in serious pain, it's hot. If there's some sort of like a cancer, that could be really cold. But more so, I will feel texture. So, thickness or thinness or prickly. Like for me, I've discovered that anger is very prickly. And sometimes really intense anger might even be jabby, like, can't even get close. So it's mostly a textural thing, and that's primarily because that's one of my developed senses. So that's how I pick up on it. So I'm always like scanning, what's over here? What's this? Oh, cold, warm. Oh, tingles. So I'm picking up on all that.
And you do that for yourself as well, it sounds like.
I can. Yeah. I mean, I think it's harder with oneself because there's a certain inherent bias.
Right, yeah.
But yeah, I mean, there's a degree of knowing when I might be off more than at other times.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm fascinated about the texture, just the way we use words to describe people, somebody who's prickly.
Yeah.
Right.
I think we're, in our culture, we probably lost our awareness of our energy awarenesses, but our language has continued it.
Well, it's right. I agree. And it's our animal sense too, because, like that person walking in the door, that's I'm not going to go near that person, and that's our animal sense. That's our instinct kicking in. And yet somebody will say, well, you didn't even talk to this person. You should talk. What are you basing that on? So it gets educated out of us.
Yeah.
And so we have to kind of re-educate us in. But the language is there. I agree. And then, of course, the language isn't there. Because like, well, what did you feel?
Yeah.
There's not a precise word for it. Yeah. So we're always using analogies. Yeah.
I imagine similar to there being degrees of emotional intelligence or cognitive intelligence, there are degrees of energy intelligence or awareness.
Right. Yeah. And I didn't know the degree of my intelligence until I went through the Reiki training, and my teacher says, "Whoa, wow, you're really good at this." I'm like, "At what?"
What are we doing?
Well, what are you talking about? So, so I didn't realize what my sensitivity was or how to kind of frame it or use it.
I have a question that ultimately might not end up in tape, but for me, that sense came from years and years and years of abuse. And I have that sense very much.
Right.
But that sense, I very much trust my senses.
Yeah.
But then I do have people that tell me, Micah, like, calm down. It's fine.
Right.
And I'm like, no, something in here is wrong. We need to get out. Like, something is wrong. And I do wonder how much of that is trauma, because I think a lot of traumatized people are like me. We can sense little tiny ounces of movement.
Yeah. So I actually have worked with a lot of trauma people.
Okay.
And they are hypersensitive.
Yeah.
Because they've been trained to notice, here comes
right.
abuser, and this, okay, now I've got to get myself braced. So you're kind of on hyper alert.
Yeah.
And so you've been trained to do that. And then that kind of, the switch never goes off.
Right.
So, you know, a bird flies past the window and you're like, "Oop," you know,
Yeah.
what was that?
Yeah.
And then you have to learn how to bring your kind of your ease down, your whole nervous system down,
Right.
and then be able to make the distinction between that was a bird,
Yes.
only a bird, you know, because in your mind, it kicks off what's in your mind, you know, you
Right.
get triggered.
Right.
And that's
So-
what you help people who've been traumatized to learn how
Right.
to get in touch
Right.
with their own energy, their own.
Right.
Yeah.
And a lot of it will be, you know, it's stored in different places of the
Right.
body.
Mhm.
And then even to be able to safely release that. So, yeah.
And so that moves into your two specialties under the umbrella of energy medicine, right?
Yeah.
So you're both a Reiki master and a healing touch practitioner.
Yeah,
Is that the word
yeah,
you would use?
yeah.
So can you tell us, you've sort of explained to us the umbrella.
Yeah.
Can you tell us how Reiki differs from healing touch, or
Yeah.
does it? Maybe it doesn't.
There's a lot of overlap.
Okay.
So Reiki was developed by a man in Japan who then came to this country and shared it. And for him, it was a philosophy as well as a healing practice. And gosh, how long has it been in this country? I want to say something like 75 years, something like that. And then here's a couple techniques, and then there's also secret symbols that they use. Healing touch was developed by a nurse in Michigan, and she was curious if the laying on of hands could work with people who are not religious.
Right.
And she found out that the answer was yes. And then she saw that her patients who were receiving this kind of touch, they healed much more quickly than the patients that didn't. So she developed a whole program that she could share with other nurses and then ultimately doctors. So, but you're basically still dealing with the energy body.
Right.
And in my training with both, one teaches you these techniques and the other one teaches you these techniques. And maybe it's the same technique even with a different name sometimes.
Okay.
But, you know, they work hand in hand. And I went through the Reiki training first, and that went, I didn't feel so confident in my abilities to kind of hang my shingle. So I said, I think I need more training. And so I found the Healing Touch schooling, and that was like a 3-year program. And I gave my all to that one. And then by the end of that, felt much more confident to work with people.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then to answer all their various questions that they have. Yeah.
What kind of questions do people have when they come to you, I guess? Who comes to you, maybe is what
Yeah.
I'm more asking, maybe.
Well, I get a whole range
Okay.
of people.
Yeah.
So I get a lot of people with trauma, a lot of people with anxiety, some people with cancer, some people with broken limbs that just don't seem to heal, so the pain lingers, so chronic pain, depression. People who just need a little pick-me-up, I call a tune-up. They feel okay, but they just want to feel a little better. Some people who they've gone through all the traditional routes of whether it was psychiatric person or medical, and they're just not getting the outcome that they want. They're still not feeling better. So they're checking me out. And usually after one session, they're like, oh, wow. And they feel significantly better.
Yeah.
But one of the questions I often get is like, well, how does it work? Like, what are you doing? And so the analogy that I use, that seems to be the most effective, is that we're each a garden hose.
Oh.
And my client comes because there's a kink, right? And they can't seem to unkink it. And so I attach my hose. My hose is running clear because of all my practices that I do. And we hook up, and their kink starts unkinking. Yeah. So that's kind of the way I explain it without getting into much more detail, which honestly, I can't even fully understand. Like, why does it work? I don't know. The science is still catching up. So.
That was an unexpected analogy. I really thought you were going to say we're all a garden. Now we're all a garden house. That was awesome.
Garden hose.
I really
We're
did.
garden hose, right? We are a garden. We're a garden hose.
So good.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And you're a teacher too. Am I correct there? Or you were a teacher?
I still am a teacher.
Me too. Let's talk about it.
What do you do?
I teach 9th and 11th grade English.
Woohoo!
Yes, very much so.
Well, you want to get into that, then we're talking, it's who I am is dependent on what time of day and what day of the week. So yes, I teach. And sometimes I'm in the English department at the university, and sometimes I'm in the dance department. So I was teaching poetry, creative writing.
Okay.
And more recently, I'm teaching modern dance and improvisational dance, and then a class I call Writing from the Body, which I also teach on my own, lately online, which is a blend of writing and body awareness and meditation, and it leads you to all sorts of interesting developments. Yeah,
Wow.
That's cool.
It's very
Where do I
cool.
sign up?
Same. Right?
Well, let me know. I mean, I'm thinking
We have her email.
I have ongoing groups
Okay.
that I lead, and sometimes it's a one-day thing, or sometimes it's a series. So, and it might be people who are there because they're working on their writing, or they are wanting some insight, or they just want something different, or they're working on their healing. So it seems like the work finds what you need, and it happens, and people end up really pleasantly surprised by what comes out of it.
Where is it that you teach? I'm sorry.
So I teach at University of Richmond.
Okay.
Sometimes I do residencies in different places, actually around the world.
Fun.
And then my own, this Writing from the Body, which I also teach at University of Richmond and around the world, sometimes out of my home and sometimes online.
Wow.
So,
Wow.
and I've taught over the years everything from preschool to, 80-year-old people.
Yeah.
So, although I seem to prefer adults.
I do not. I do not.
But I do like 7th graders, 6th and 7th graders.
Really?
Yeah, I did them
Interesting.
for a while. I was a substitute teacher years ago.
Right.
And I love that they are at that cusp between I'm a kid and I'm an adult.
Yeah.
And like, will you hold my hand? Oh, no, wait a minute, don't do that anymore.
That's embarrassing.
Yeah.
But they still sleep with their teddy bear.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not a 7th grade kind of a person. I have taught 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, and 11th grades. But I love 9th graders because they're so full of everything. They are all of the cosmos at one time. And by the time they get to 11th grade, that's been shaved down in this kind of sad way.
Yeah.
They're still wonderful. I still love my 11th graders. That's not what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But I spend a lot of time just asking them to trust themselves by the time they are in 11th grade, as opposed to...
Thank you for doing that.
Yeah. I just... When they're in 9th grade and they have this wild idea and they just tell me about it, it's like, yeah, let's do that. That's great. Let's do it right now. And then by the 11th grade, they're like, I don't know, it's stupid, but I was thinking we could write a haiku about a tree. And I was like,
well,
let's go hang out with the tree and write.
And that trust goes right into what you're...
Right. It gets schooled out of us.
Right.
Right. And so not only to trust, but to sense, you know, so like, well, how are you feeling? Oh, is there heat over any?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, well, is it attached to a memory? You know,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
so it's about kind of re-inhabiting one's own body and connecting back into your own wisdom. Because, you know, what I'm doing is I'm not going to impose my agenda on you. It's about me showing you how to listen to your own intelligence, because we've all got it.
Right.
So.
Well, with that hose analogy, it's like the energy has gotten stuck. You're just opening the channel so that people can feel again.
Right.
Where they've shut it off because it was too scary to feel or whatever.
Right. Yeah.
So then, I'm curious, did your practice lead you to education, or did education lead you to your practice, or was there a path there, or have they always sort of walked together?
In the dance world, you know, I'd finish having my dance with whomever, and we'd be sitting on the floor, and I would just feel compelled to put my hand somewhere on their body. And then we'd keep talking. And then it would come off, and they'd say, "What did you do? My migraine is gone." I'm like, I don't know. I just kind of felt like putting my hand there. And that happened several times, and people would say, "Oh, you're a healer." And I'm like, yeah, I don't know what that means. And dismissed it. Then I moved to Korea, South Korea.
Wow.
And, oh yeah, so the other thing is I'm a writer. So I write books, I write articles, and I was writing an article on the country's best known shaman. She's also a dancer. And as I'm at her center, she says to me, "You're a healer, you need to be doing your healing." And because there's that tradition in that culture that goes back thousands of years, it kind of resonated with me in a way that when my dancer friends said it, I was like, yeah, whatever. So when I came back to the US, I'm like, okay, what is that? And I started exploring it. And then found a local woman who teaches Reiki. I was like, okay, let me do that. So they came together that way.
Wow.
And so it was a great growth and wonderful way to give to the community and help people out. So that's how it came together.
Wow. Do you ever think you would move into teaching things like Reiki or healing touch, or is that maybe not your path?
Maybe not. Like teaching the healing touch, I mean, it's a very formal training. And then it's a very rigid training. Like you have to do it, like here's the material, follow the script. Not so interested in that because I'm much more improvisational than that. Doing the Reiki, you know, also not so, I guess I'm, you know, I'll teach people how to tap into their own wisdom, but not under, and now you are certified with a certain way. Yeah, I can't, that's how, right, you know, and, you know, so I'll teach people maybe how to, I mean, I've taught people how to do meditation.
Right.
And I'll teach people how to get in touch with their creative gifts, and how to listen to their body. But, you know, I'm not going to be necessarily formally doing that. No. I mean, I teach in a lot of ways. And I love leading people into experiences. So, I mean, I think I like doing that. So, yeah.
A wonderful confluence there. I love that dance especially. I went to school for musical theater. And so I know that the dance world can be this particularly harmful place, right? Like women especially, and the way that they interact with their bodies and the way that they're told to feel about their bodies can be specifically very harmful. My own mother broke her ribs so she would be a better dancer because she grew up in that era, right? And I'm just curious sort of how you found healing in that place, and how we can maybe share that with other dancers, because I know.
Yeah. Prior to entering high school, you get a physical exam, and they discovered I have a scoliosis.
Okay.
And so my doctor said, "Oh, no gym, no movement. We might have to put a brace on you." And when you're going into high school, this is like the kiss of death. No. This is like, do not ever sit, right? And so I went through high school with an invisible brace. My doctor said the pain was going to be increasing and it would be there for life. When I got to college and I'm looking through like all my course offerings, I'm like, creative movement, doctor's not here.
Neither is mom or dad.
Neither is mom or dad. And I signed up. And I watched my pain level go.
So you were highly motivated.
I was highly motivated. And I did, I did jazz, I did ballet, and then I did also improvisation. And the improvisation was about like, I'm not wearing a brace, you can't tell me what to do. So it was a bit of defiance, but it was about me connecting in with my own intelligence, which had been cut off because I was shut down. And, dance in some ways, as much as I love dancers and watching dance and everything about the field, sometimes it can be very rigid too. And it's not about loving your body.
Right.
In many ways. It's about, you must have this kind of body. I know you weigh 100 pounds, but that's a little bit too much. Or you're a little too tall, or whatever it is. So sometimes dance can be harmful in that it's reinforcing self-harm in the way that you view yourself.
Yeah.
So love your body. And there's some dance companies that are not about that at all.
Right.
Right? So and there's like all different shapes, different ages. I mean, that's another thing. If you're in ballet, you're 30, you're done. Time to retire. And if anything, like you're 90, keep dancing. I mean, it's so healthy for your brain. It's healthy for your whole body. It's healthy for your being. I mean, there's a reason when we're dancing in a group and everybody's happy. So, if there's a one message, not only for dancers, but for everybody, learn how to love yourself. Learn how can you take better care of yourself? Okay, today, this moment, right now. And we're all having to learn it. And sometimes go against the culture that says, I'm sorry, you're going to have to stay after work for another 5 hours. Oh, but I'm hungry. I'm sorry, you can't, No, you need to take care of yourself. So, and do whatever you need to do. Take care of yourself. Listen. Pay attention.
I wonder, though, for students like mine, listening, I think, to themselves is a skill they probably had innately, but like you've been saying, was educated out of them.
Right.
How do we re-educate people on how to listen to their bodies? Or their minds, or just listen, I guess.
I mean, through the arts, any of the arts. And then not only that, but like working with each other. Because when you're working with each other, then you're creating a collaboration. So I think arts is a really wonderful way. Being in nature, because you find out, you start resonating with a butterfly or something growing, and you start realizing, wow, I kind of am that way, or there's a certain peace that you feel. I mean, we love going to the ocean and just stare at the ocean. Like, what are you doing? I'm staring at the ocean. You're doing that an hour ago. I'm not done. or a fire, in a fire pit, and there's something, it's like reinforcing your own patterns, and you end up just getting more in touch. Meditation, and there's all different forms of meditation.
Right.
Something as simple as going for a walk.
Yeah.
But people taking time to listen to you. Like, no, I want to hear what you have to say. As opposed to, okay, here's my lecture, and Friday there'll be a test, and you will tell me everything I just said. Memorize it. I don't care what you're thinking.
Which is an example of how we're not only are we not teaching or cultivating in our children how to listen to their bodies, their senses, their spirits, we're not teaching them how to think anymore.
Yeah.
We're telling them what to think instead of how to critically think.
Right.
All too often.
Yeah.
I will say, though, that is not the movement of education right now. The movement of education right now is very much in the way of let me explore your own thinking and let me help you to think about this content. So I'm hopeful, actually, that like the
good. I want to hear
that
that.
I teach. I think every teacher in my school, at least, is very dedicated.
What school? Where are you?
Henrico High.
Great.
And I think we're a hard to staff school, right?
Yeah.
But every staff member we have, or most all, they're really committed to helping kids. I'm not, I don't do tests. We don't have homework. I don't do lectures. We do exploratory learning.
Well, that's it.
Well, yeah,
that's it.
And I think most of us do. So anyway, that was a side note. But I think I'm hopeful that we're now reteaching. But I am curious how we teach kids to sort of take this specialized knowledge that you have. How we teach anyone, to take this specialized knowledge that you have and make it part of their everyday routine, such that it becomes a rhythm rather than an effort. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, even something as, the difference between going outside to play versus going onto your computer or your screen and you're being fed information. So that level of interaction, which happens when you're outside, that's taking place. But here it could be too fed and you're following along. So I think that does help, being outside, you're developing your own critical thinking, critical observation even. But here you're getting, there's too much being fed. And when I was in high schools and middle schools, there was a lot of SOLs going on. And that was not helpful, because that's all about like you're just learning as much as you need to learn for testing, and it's not about developing on your own. Yeah. Yeah.
So then I guess this is my favorite question that we get to ask.
Okay.
Not thinking just about children at this point, what is one thing, it can be an exercise, an idea, a practice, however you want it to be. What is one thing that we can take from you who have these years of training, these years of experience that we'll never have, or maybe we will, but not yet. And how can we use that thing to care not just for ourselves, but for our neighbors? What can I bring to my next door neighbor and say, I learned this really cool thing and I want to share it with you?
I think the most basic thing is kindness. And it's not that I'm even going to show you, because like if you go to your neighbor and like, hi, I'm going to show you, and you're like, but if you just are that, and then you connect, and it's a language that you both end up understanding. So it's showing up with an open heart with yourself, and then sharing that. And doing it, you've got to do it with minimal expectation or no expectation, because you can't go like, okay, I'm going to go to my neighbor and give this in order for me to get that. No, it's about, I'm just going to leave this gift with this person, and they can do with it what they want. So, that's my sense of being neighborly, whether it's the person next door to you or even the person that cut you off on the road, because you never know what is happening in their life. I mean, you think like, man, they just like, who do they think they are? Like, yeah, well, maybe they just dropped off their grandmother at the hospital and they're a little distracted. You just don't know. You just don't know. And then that goes back to even like, and how can you be kind with yourself? And that's the self-care. So how can you practice self-care with yourself?
Yeah.
And so even something as simple as I'm just going to sit here and just enjoy breathing for a little bit, because we tend to have shallow breath. And once we allow ourselves to breathe a little deeper, I actually feel a little more peaceful now. And it's that fast. It's that fast. But we're so busy and, so shallow.
Right.
So, in fact, I know of some therapy training in which they say the person comes into your office and they say the first thing that you do as the therapist, you just kind of, and it actually affects the person, because then they go to another place of feeling a little bit more relaxed, and then you say the first thing, whatever it is you're going to say. But conscious breath first. Yeah.
Conscious breath first. I think that's a good thing we can take away to our communities and our neighbors and our kiddos if we have them.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Indeed.
Well, those are all the questions I had planned for you, and I know we're running up on that hour mark, so I don't want to keep you past the time that we said we'd have you. But we're really grateful for you coming and hanging out with us and telling us about energy work, but also about kindness, right?
Kindness, yeah.
And dance,
Yeah.
and kiddos.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if one of the people watching wanted to work with you for healing touch or Reiki, what would be the best way for them to get in touch with you?
So I have a website, so myname.com, so CherylPallant.com. That's an easy way to see all of my offerings. And my offerings may be online, sometimes in person. And then, with the healing work, they don't even necessarily need to be in my office. They could be far away, so I do distant healing too. And if you've got that little inkling of curiosity, check it out. And if you're a disbeliever, I'm not going to use logic to convince you, but we will have an experience and your eyes will open.
Yeah.
And your body will feel much better.
It's funny, when we first started talking, I'd planned to ask you about the non-believers, but then as you talked, it sort of didn't even feel like there was reason for skepticism. You everything you said was very grounded, and while I do tend to be a skeptic, I don't think even I was thinking in that way.
Yeah.
But I did intend to talk to you about the skeptics, I guess. But now I'm just sold.
All right.
Well, one more time, we do want to thank you very much for being with us.
Thanks for having this conversation. It's great.
Fun.
Yeah.
Enjoyed it very much.
Fun, and bring more of it into the world.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's the goal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With giraffes, with laughter, whatever the case may be. With purple.
With purple.
Yeah.
The color of the ethereal. So it's perfect.
Yeah.
When you were talking about kindness, the word that kept running through my mind is acceptance. Kindness springs from a self-acceptance and an acceptance of others and an acceptance of whatever it is in that moment. And I think you're right. I think kindness is the key to what
it's
we do.
key, because it's
so we can't get there if we're not accepting.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I think of compassion, self-compassion.
Yeah.
Yeah, but but look at me, I've got this,
Right.
like, no. And I find that we tend to be more forgiving of others than we are of ourselves.
Yeah.
Definitely.
So cultivate it.
Yeah.
Cultivate it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My mama,
be your own best friend.
Yeah.
No, go ahead.
my mama says this really great thing. Or my stepmama, I guess. She says, when I say something mean about me, she says, "Hey, that's my friend you're talking about."
Good. Great line.
Isn't that cute?
That's a great line.
So I've taken to saying it to kids.
Yeah. Right.
And of course, she doesn't have a mean bone in her body, but she says, "Hey," and I go,
Yeah. Right.
"What I do?"
Right. Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah.
that's my friend you're talking about. Got to talk to ourselves like that.
Yeah. You do.
Yeah.